All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeslin, and thank you for joining us today. We have approximately 40 participants for the meeting. I'm going to give a couple more minutes for others to join. Can you all see me, hear me well? Yeah, all good? Perfect. All right, so thank you again for joining GBRI's Well AP exam preparation kickoff meeting. So while we wait for others, let me give you a quick intro about GBRI. GBRI is a privately owned online gamified platform, and mainly a sustainability and social impact education platform with a mission to make sustainability resources affordable and accessible to everyone around the globe. We are based in New York City with a presence around the world. We are also a USGBC education partner, an AIA education provider, and also education partners for a few other organizations that you see here, including the UN SDGs, CHIPS, and the Rhode Island Energy Efficiency Council. We believe a truly sustainable future must also be an equitable one, where every human is treated equally and fairly. Our mission is to make sustainability, health, and wellness available and affordable to everyone around the world. With hundreds of courses on sustainability topics like energy, water, LEED, net zero buildings, green schools, energy modeling, daylighting, BIM, health and wellness, to name a few, GBRI's Learning Hub is your one-stop shop for all your sustainability education needs. So right now we have around, let's see, 15 participants. So we had 40 participants who registered. So I'm going to get started because we have a tight session. So this is week 1 of our Well AP version 2 exam preparation. On the slide, you can see the agenda. Basically, I'll do a quick intro of Well before I get into 10 things you should know about the Well AP exam preparation, followed by an intro on how GBRI's Well AP exam prep works. And then I will introduce you the exam prep instructors, and then we'll get started with the first knowledge domain, Well certification. Okay, and finally, we'll wrap up with the homework and what's next before the next session. Those of you who are new to Well, launched in 2014, the Well building standard has come a long way. With presence in more than 65 countries, the Well building standard is about advancing human health or occupant health in the places where we all spend majority of our lives. It's an efficient tool and effective opportunity for building owners, designers, operators on critical health and safety issues. From commercial buildings to warehouses, stadiums, to hotels, to hospitals, Well version 2 is designed to work with all types of building projects. With our experience with the pandemic, we know no building was spared, and it makes the most sense to guard all buildings where we spend a good portion of our lives. Well also complements green building rating systems such as LEED and BRIAM. There's a study done by the World Green Building Council's publication, so I'm going to share that link in the chat if you're interested to look at how LEED and Well can complement each other. With that, let's look into 10 things that you should know about the Well AP exam preparation. I'm very excited that you have chosen to pursue the Well AP exam credential, Well AP credential. Some of you are joining the session as a test. I really hope that you will sign up towards the end of the session. Right. Number one, what is the WELL AP credential? A WELL AP is an individual who has expertise in the WELL building standard. A WELL AP, in addition, also possesses the knowledge and skills required for projects to navigate through the WELL certification process, including participating in design charrettes, design and development process, supporting and encouraging integrated design throughout the project lifecycle, and managing the application process, etc. What is the exam eligibility to become a WELL AP? Thankfully, there's not a lot of requirements. If you are if you are 18 years or older, you are qualified to sit for the exam. Even though WELL project experience is recommended, it is not a requirement. So if you're familiar with lead AP exam, in the past, there used to be a requirement to have lead project experience, and they took it away. Similarly for WELL, there is no, even though they recommend it, but it is not a requirement. If you are 18 and older, then you are good to sit for the WELL AP exam from an eligibility point of view. Now, how much does the WELL AP exam cost? For individuals, it's $299. For professionals, I should say, and for students, it is $99 if you are a full-time student. And these fees are charged by the IWBI and not by GBRI. I just wanted to let you know we are just an education provider for USGBC and IWBI. Here is a slide that was shared by IWBI with us previously, which just shows the strength in numbers in terms of group prices. If you have larger offices where you have more than 10, 25 people who are interested in taking the exam, then you get a discount. So what is the WELL AP exam format? Is it paper-based or is it computer-based? It is a computer-based exam, similar to the Lead Green Associate, AP, and other credentials. It's a computer-based exam, so you will take it at a Prometric center. Now, at no additional cost, you can also take the exam remotely at home through an online Prometric testing platform. I know it sounds wonderful. Although this sounds like a wonderful opportunity, I hear from some of our past students that it was not a pleasant experience, especially when technology and internet doesn't cooperate all the time. So if you are looking into this option, I would highly recommend you do some more research and a few tests, like testing your internet connection, testing with the platform, etc. All right. The exam is a timed test, and you are allowed 2.5 hours for the exam. Each question is multiple choice, and there's a total of 115 questions, out of which a few of them are survey questions, or you wouldn't know. Some of the questions are not scored, some of them are scored, but you wouldn't know which ones are scored and which ones are unscored. The primary language for the exam is English, and exam question and all the answer options are displayed on screen. The computer records your responses as you answer them. You are, of course, able to change your answers, skip questions. You're able to flag the questions for later review. And all the questions would be delivered randomly throughout the exam, and you are not informed of a question status, whether it is right or wrong. Okay, you would not know that during the exam. You will receive the results towards the end of the exam following the test. The exam is scored between 125 and 200 points. You will have to earn a 170 or higher to pass and earn your WELL AP. Your exam score will be displayed on screen at the end of the exam, and you'll receive a printed report of your results from test center staff. We actually have an example of the report in one of our sessions. So you'll notice it if you have already paid for GBRI's exam prep. One of the sessions we go through how the screen looks like, just to make you more familiar with the entire platform. All right. So what are WELL AP exam prep reference documents? In other words, what is the exam based on? So listed here on the screen, you can see 3 reference documents, and I would like to call them as the core materials for the WELL AP exam preparation. All these documents are free to download from the IWBI website. However, I would caution on the version, because you look at the version closely, it is not the latest version that you would be using for the exam prep. It is basically version 2, version 2, Q4 2020 addenda. That's the one that you'll be using. That's the core guide. In that, you'll also see beta features, but those are not assessed for the exam. The second guide is the WELL certification guidebook with, again, Q3, Q4 2020 addenda. And the last is the WELL portfolio guidebook with the Q4 2020 addenda. So all these documents are available, within our exam prep also. That way there is no confusion on the version. Number 6, what are WELL knowledge domains? So we are going actually one step deeper into the exam prep materials. Knowledge domains reflect the WELL building standards certification process, or the concepts. There are a total of 11 knowledge domains. On the screen, you are looking at all of them. It starts with air, water, nourishment, light, movement. 10 of them are WELL concepts, and one is the WELL certification. In total, there are 11 knowledge domains. So now, why is it important? Here you can see the number of questions that represent each knowledge domain. For example, you'll see on air, you can expect 11 questions, underwater, 9 questions, nourishment, 10 questions. Throughout GBRI's exam prep, whenever our instructors are presenting each knowledge domain, we will emphasize on these things, how many questions you can expect. And following our live sessions, you can take our practice exams. That way you can master each knowledge domain as you make progress in our exam prep. What are WELL AP question types? Basically, the exam assesses the candidate's abilities at 3 levels, 3 cognitive levels: recall, application, and analysis. Recall items, these are items that assess a candidate's ability to recall factual material and foundational content that is presented in a similar context to the exam references that I showed previously. Second is application, which is basically, it provides a scenario, a candidate, the novel problem or scenario that the candidate can solve using familiar principles or procedures described in one of the reference documents. Last is analysis. In this case, the items are broken down into a problem, into components to create a solution. The candidate must not only recognize the different elements of the problem, but must also evaluate the relationship or interactions of these elements. There is the recall, second is application, and third is analysis. What about project scenario for WELL exam? So this is something, a new concept under the WELL version 2 exam. Under WELL version 1, this was not there. So there is going to be project scenario-based questions for WELL version. So what does it actually mean? So in between you taking exam, there will be a particular scenario that will be shown to you. This could be almost like, think about this as a reading comprehension. Like you'll have the small passage. The passage will be a story from a project. You'll be given certain things, and based on whatever is given to you, you'll be asked 3 or 4 questions. Okay, so that is basically a scenario based on a particular project. You won't have access to it ahead of time. It is during the project, during the exam is one you see on the screen. You can always access that on the screen. It's like an embedded content. That brings down to another question: what is embedded content? So these are some content from the WELL version guidebooks that is compiled into a PDF document. And as a candidate, you can access them during the exam. So this one, you can also access before the exam. That way you know what materials are available. This includes all feature names, all numbers of feature names, points, some thresholds for air and water features, air filtration levels, and more. So let me show you them real quick. So these are, if you have the WELL AP, Know Your WELL AP guide, this is exactly page 18, page 8 to page 14 is what you have access during the exam. So almost like an open book, but not the entire book, but just a few pages. This will, by knowing this, you can save some of your mental resources. You don't have to by heart all the concept names or things like that. I know on the screen, I don't think you can see it very well, but basically the first one is concepts and features, which means, under every knowledge domain, there are all these features. You can see air quality, credits, right? And their name and the number. So you don't have to worry about memorizing them at all. So you have access to that. Second is a partial table of some thresholds, especially for air and water concepts. This is many numbers. It, for example, talks about particulate matter 2.5 micrograms, this and that. So when you start reading the manual, you'll feel overwhelmed. So you don't have to feel overwhelmed at the beginning, because you can rest assured these would be available to you during the exam as an embedded PDF. So whenever during the exam, if you feel like accessing it, just a click of a button, you can open it up. And last is the scoring and certification level. It just shows you the thresholds of points you would need for each certification level, like silver, gold, platinum. Okay, so that's the embedded content. Last but not least is whether the WELL AP credential is right for you. As you can see from the word cloud on the slide, WELL AP span almost every job function and industry, as health and safety and well-being has becoming increasingly relevant, especially after a pandemic that we all went through. If you consider yourself as a leader in your industry and you are committed to placing health and wellness at the center of building design and performance, then the WELL AP credential may be a right fit for you. Just like a lead AP credential, it's a toolkit where you get to apply the lessons learned from it on your projects, small and big, and also in your personal lives. That's one way how I look at all these credentials and tools. After all, they're just tools. It's not that you have to bite them all. It's just utilize it how you see fit on your projects. From a business standpoint, the global health and wellness industry is a $4.2 trillion market. So that gives you another reason whether you're considering becoming a WELL AP or not. Okay. So that brings us to the next item here. Let's move on to second and third items on our agenda. I want to introduce you to the GBRI's WELL AP study group. And then also I would like to introduce you to our instructors. Now that we're on the same page on WELL AP credential, let's look at how GBRI's exam prep materials can help you pass the exam on your very first try. I know some of you have already registered for the exam prep and some of you are testing it. So I really hope that the ones who are testing this session will give you enough reasons for you to subscribe to it. If you have any questions, you can type them in. I see some questions already. Okay. And if you have more questions, please type them in, or I can answer them towards the end or after the presentation. Right. So let's, can you see my screen? Basically, it shows the exam preparation slide.
Perfectly.
Perfect. Thank you. So what you will need for the exam preparation, first is if you on the left-hand side is the core components. This is the core resource I shared in the beginning. So for GBRI's exam prep contains all of the core materials from IWBI, which is the standard in itself, the certification handbook and portfolio guidebook. Along with that, you have access to the live sessions that, something like similar like this. This is the first session. So we have 5 more live sessions. In total, 6 live sessions run by WELL faculties, WELL APs, and WELL faculty members, where you can ask questions during the session. You will get familiarized with each knowledge domain. Following that, faculty would also go through some practice questions, and then you'll have access to hundreds of practice questions and 3 simulated mock exams. I understand some of the students may have difficulty attending the sessions live, but no worries, you will have access to all the materials on demand, including recordings of classes as videos. So for instance, if you signed up today, you will also have access to all the past videos, and you can get used to them before attending the live session and come with questions that you may have. In addition, we also have a WhatsApp social group as a support team of GBRI instructors, GBRI IT team, and past and present students. Help is on your way 24/7. I'm extremely thankful for many of our past students who continue to support our current and future students in their exam prep journey. Here are some additional WellAP learner resources from IWBI. We have downloaded it all, and these are also available on your GBRI on-demand account if you have already purchased the exam prep materials. All right, let's look at our exam prep methodology. So as I mentioned previously, there are project-based or project-based questions for the exam. So how can you address those things? So we include real-world examples. We use an actual project to teach the exam prep. You will be able to learn everything in the context of a project. We also have included verification methods, the well core guidance, of course, practice questions, and the well mock exams that are simulated to the actual exam. Teaching well through a project that we can all relate so that you can easily understand how a concept applies to a context and apply it. This will help you memorize core concepts and apply it not only for your exam, but also in the real world. This is a front elevation of our project. It's a GBRI community center located in New York City. Thanks to Aparna, architect Aparna, who is GBRI's sustainability fellow, who designed some of these renderings. And we use this throughout our exam prep. So you can relate each of the concepts that you learn in the context of a project. There are more renderings, and you will be able to see them during the exam, the rest of our exam prep. So whenever we say our project, this is the project we'll be referring to. And I encourage you all to visualize it whenever we mention it. This will help you learn the concept in the context of a project, which then you will remember and apply beyond the exam. So our exam prep is designed in such a way that you could become a WellAP in as little as 6 weeks. You can see some of the reviews from the USGBC pro reviewers. These are reviewers for the USGBC who are professionals who review content independently. Reviews over here. And what is actually covered in these 6 weeks? Let's look at them here. This is like a roadmap. So week 1, which is today, we became familiar with the WellAP exam prep and the resources. And the second half of today's meeting would be on well certification. And then we also have a program called Study Buddy, which is we encourage our students to partner up with other students, completely optional. Some of us may like to study on our own. Some of us always would like to have a partner, some form of motivation, encouragement. And this is also where the WhatsApp group helps. Second week would be air and water concepts, followed by practice questions. Week 3 would be nourishment and light concepts. Week 4, movement and thermal comfort concepts. Week 5, sound and material concepts. And week 6, mind and community concepts, followed by practice questions and mock exams 1, 2, and 3. By the end of our exam prep, you can also earn our socially shareable wellness ambassador badge. All right, it's time to introduce our wonderful faculty members for our exam. On the screen, you're looking at 2 wonderful people, Carolina and Douglas. Both of them took our exam prep in the beginning a few months ago, last year, and they became WellAPs, and now they are teaching. Doug is also a well faculty. Both of them are also LEED accredited. They both are familiar with LEED process. So Doug is a civil engineer, an environmental engineering consultant. His expertise in monitoring and mitigating noise and air pollution impacts to population health. So when you hear him speak on some of these topics, he's bringing in live examples from his projects. That's a huge benefit to you as a student. Not only you can master the exam prep and pass the exam, but also learn from someone who has real world experience. He has a bunch of licenses like EIT, PG, WellAP, Well Faculty, Lead Associate. He holds a master's in civil engineering, environmental engineering. He's also a PhD candidate at the Tufts University in environmental health. He's also an associate professor of engineering in Massachusetts. His bunch of other qualifications too. Doug has worked in in 5 continents in more than 50 countries. That's a wonderful experience there to have someone like him to be part of our exam prep. Second is Carolina. She is originally from Argentina. She just moved recently to Houston. She is also a lead AP and a well AP. She's an architect, currently working as a sustainability consultant for contract workspaces. She has been helping her clients obtain international certifications that help with their companies fulfill their ESG goals by demonstrating their commitment to sustainability, promoting the health and wellness of building occupants, and enhancing the reputation and business practices. She brings in a ton of experience from multiple projects that she has worked in around the world. And she is also, she has earned her architecture degree at the National University in Rosario in Argentina, and has gained a lot of experience since becoming an architect in the hospitality, design, and construction sector. So with that, I also welcome both of them, and I am so glad that they are, our instructors now. So here, I'm going to share a few testimonials and also want to congratulate some of our past students and few team members. One is Smera. She has passed the exam way early in the process, and she's also helped us prepare these materials that you will all be taking. This is also another testimonial from Muskan. She was one of our exam prep scholarship winners from 2022. And she got a score of 192 out of 200 and utilizing our exam prep. Here are a few more testimonials. I want to congratulate many of our past students and also want to thank them for taking time to share their testimonials. So that concludes the first part of today's session. If you have decided to take the WELL AP exam, here's a quick step-by-step high-level roadmap. I'm going to share GBRI's exam prep link here for those of you who are testing this session. The second part of today's session will be handled by Doug, who will familiarize all of you with the WELL certification process. That's it. So let me send you the link for the exam prep in the chat. Oh, I think I see this link already. No, let me just share it.
Yes, I went ahead and shared some of the information you mentioned.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Carolina. All right, Doug, take it away, and I will share the link in the chat.
Okay, can everyone hear me? All right. Yes, excellent. All right, fine, thank you. Welcome. I'm glad to see everyone here on the call. Good afternoon. It's afternoon where I am, where Jeslin is, where Carolina is, and I'm in Boston, not far from New York City. And I know that some of you are calling in from other areas of the world where there's not the afternoon, so thank you for joining us today. As Jeslin said, I'm an environmental engineer, and I took this course last year, and I found this course to be very efficient in the pathway towards WELL certification, WELL AP certification. And so I wanted to give back a little bit of what I learned and help each of you become WELL APs. So I'll be delivering the section today on the WELL certification process. And I think it should be no more than about an hour and hopefully less. And so we'll have some time for questions at the end. And then you'll see me again if you register officially for the course. You'll see me again next week, and I will deliver the modules on the concepts on air and water, which are both areas of expertise that I've had in my career. And then you'll see me again after seeing Carolina present for a few sessions. I will be delivering the sound and materials sections sometime in April as we progress further into the course. So we're thrilled that you joined us today. And I would just like to share my screen now. So let me do that. So Jeslin, I want you to check this. I'm still looking on my notes page here, so hold on one second. And maybe you could answer some questions. There's a few questions I see.
Perfect. Yeah, yeah. So take your time. Let me just look. While we wait for Doug to get ready with his presentation, I have a quick question. Since Doug mentioned, this may not be afternoon for all of you. I'm curious, where all are you signing in from now? You can enter, your responses in the chat window. Whether it's US or city, you can enter the city name too. Wonderful. Oh my gosh, Australia. I think most others are from the US. There's a few from Canada, one from the UK. Lovely.
Wow,
Poland.
Poland. Welcome.
Okay, I think I'm ready to present.
Perfect. We can see your screen now.
Yes.
Perfect.
And,
thank you all.
All right. Thank you, Justin. Okay, everybody. Let's progress into this. All right, so welcome to the exam preparation. This is the section on the WELL certification process. And I think you can see my slides. So I'm going to launch into this. Normally this is given in week 2 in the past, but right now we're starting it into the week 1 section. And as I said, next week, we'll talk about the air and water concept. So that will not be covered today. So today we will cover WELL certification and WELL portfolio and not the air and water concepts. Okay, and let's go into the certification process. As you saw earlier in Jeslin's presentation, these are the knowledge domains. And there are 11 with WELL certification included in that. And you'll notice that WELL certification has the most number of questions that you will find on the exam with 12. So it's important to understand this concept, this knowledge domain very well. And I hope to get you further down that path today. So we're going to start with WELL certification and WELL portfolio. So what you will need to know and understand and have skills in for the exam are specific topics under WELL certification that we will cover in our session today. Except the highlighted text, that's material that you will be expected to study as part of the homework. And we'll talk about the homework later in the session today. But everything else that's not highlighted here, we will be discussing today. So I encourage you to revisit these slides after you're done with each knowledge domain, especially the one today, to make sure you have a good grasp of each of the elements listed under knowledge and skills subheadings. So I'm not going to list all of the, review all of the knowledge and skills, but generally this is the format for each of our domains, our knowledge domains, and what you're expected to know for the exam in terms of knowledge and skills. So we have talked about a project, and there will be a project on the exam, and there'll be multiple questions that are attributed to that project that you will need to have knowledge of and skills in order to answer it. So our project, as Jeslin said earlier, is the GBRI Community Center, which architect Perner had designed for us. And so this is in New York City. As we said, it's in early design stages. So this is a representative project. This won't be on your exam, but this is an illustrative project that is typical of the project that you might see on your exam. I can share with you that on my exam, the project that I needed to understand and answer questions about was an office building that was being renovated in China. And not only were there lighting renovations, but there were acoustic touches that needed to be installed for the sound concept to meet the requirements of the sound concept under well. There are also nourishment concept issues too regarding food that was served in the building to employees. And there may have been one or two questions relating to thermal comfort as well. So that was the typical project. Now your project will likely be different, and it won't be this project. This is just an example that we share with you today. So for our project, you have a floor layout, a floor plan, circular floor plan, open to a sky courtyard. And it could be covered with a dome if we'd like to decide to do that later. And you can see there are various functions. So we show this to illustrate a typical project that has a multifunctional structure. And there are different synergies in this structure that tie into the well building standard. For example, in the noise concept, the library, which you see at the top of the screen, would need to be an isolated quiet zone, obviously. In the cafeteria, which you see off to the lower right, there would need to be certain nourishment requirements met in order for this project to meet well standards. And there are thermal comfort and other different well domains that need to be addressed in this. And they all have synergies with each other, or some of them do. So this is a typical example of how you might tie in the well building standard to a project. And this is one of those projects. So we show you this, for example. Here's a few more renderings. You can see various elements in the space. And this is, again, a reference project. When we say our project going forward, which Jeslin mentioned, that's the project that we'll be referring to. This will help you learn the concepts of well in the context of a project that you will remember and apply beyond just the exam itself. So our project is 25,000 square feet and has 25 full-time occupants. That's important. You may be required to do some calculations on the exam that, for example, the number of ergonomic workstations is based on a number of employees and number of square footage. And so there'll be some calculations that are not too complicated, but you do need to understand how to do the calculations. And we'll show you what those calculations entail in terms of square footage and full-time occupancy. Okay, so our session now will be talking about the certification process. And again, there are 12 exam questions from this knowledge domain. So if you're making notes, I think it would be useful to make the highlight notes, or if you're recording the session is recorded for registered GBRI exam test applicants. So if well equates to human health and well-being, what is well certification? Well, now we're familiar with the typical project. Let's look at well certification through the eyes of our project. So well certification is a roadmap for organizations or project teams looking to incorporate the best of well building standards into their project, or a single asset or location or group of projects or a portfolio. It's a roadmap to advance human health and well-being in one or more multiple projects, one or more multiple locations. If you were to make a formula for well certification, that would look something like what you see on the screen. A building or a project or projects plus the guidelines from the well building standard, version 2 is shown here, which is your roadmap. And then you add in the implementation and the strategies from the guide, documenting them for compliance, and then finally achieving well certification, but not until we have third-party verification by GBCI. That's not our organization, that's a certification institute, which includes an on-site performance test. So that's something we'll discuss as well too, the third-party documentation review and performance verification. Now, performance verification could be lab testing of water quality or air quality, or document review, or HVAC system flush out and testing. So that's part of the certification process and part of the formula that we just showed you. If you're looking for all of the elements on one slide, this is a high-level roadmap to well certification. And throughout the session, we'll introduce you to several of these milestones, which you can utilize to take additional notes to remember important concepts, roles and project team members, etc. So let's talk about the overarching reason why should a project or a building apply for occupant wellness. And if you think about that, this is something your clients, if you're a consultant or an architect or an engineer or a planner, may ask you, why go with well occupant wellness? Or if you're into sustainability consulting, you may be asked this. So we look back to a quote from Winston Churchill to answer that question. And he says, we shape our buildings, and afterwards our buildings shape us. So this is an interesting quote because we spend about 90% of our time indoors. Think about working, sleeping, preparing meals, and relaxing. We're actually spending close to 90% of our time indoors. And so buildings are an inseparable part of our lives. And this is where we bond with family. We sleep, we rest, we study, whether we're in school or office spaces. We meet friends in restaurants or in public parks, and buildings are everywhere. We can't ignore them. And to a very good degree, they shape who we are. And Winston Churchill so eloquently quoted that. From a financial standpoint, we can look at companies' operating costs for businesses, and companies proclaim their staff as their greatest asset. And that's true. I'm sure it's true. But for most businesses, what you see here is actually the typical cost. This is from a study completed by the World Green Building Council. And it shows that staff costs, such as salaries and benefits, account for about 90% of business operational expenses. That's a huge percentage. Not only should people be the key factor that makes a business great, but they're truly assets to the company if that significant amount of resources, financial resources, is directed at the people. So let's take a look at, now that we've been talking about the well building standard for a bit, you may have already read some parts of it, and hopefully you did some pre-reading before coming to today's session. For those who have not, let's dive in deeper and see what it contains. All right, so the well building standard is a collection of research-based guidelines, strategies, and they are spread across different well features, which is a combination of what we call preconditions and optimizations. So we'll talk a bit more about preconditions and optimizations in the next few slides. I also wanted to talk about the well building standard itself. You will be sitting for the exam for version 2, V2 at the bottom. And you can see that at the bottom, this is something that Jeslin spoke about earlier. There are 10 concepts, and those are domains of knowledge. Now, the 11th is the one we're discussing today. That's the actual well certification process. If you look at V1, there were only 7 concepts. And what's been added? You might ask, what's different? Well, what's different is that we have added in V2 sound, which is one of my areas of expertise, and materials, which I'll be talking about and presenting in a few weeks. So those are added. Those are additional concepts that have been added, as well as community. And that is a concept that Carolina will be presenting in one of her presentation sessions. So under the previous version, there were only 7. Now, you don't have to remember the previous version concepts. And in the embedded content, you will actually see the 10 concepts enumerated and listed, so you don't have to remember all of the names of the concepts. So that's something that's available to you on demand during the exam. You can simply click a mouse click, and if you're taking the exam at a testing center or even at home, and call up the PDF that is the embedded content, which lists the 10 concepts in V2. Were there any questions about this? I see some chat. Perhaps Carolina could respond while I'm speaking, if that's possible. This one, do the credentials on well need to be renewed? Yes, we'll talk about that. So we'll, if you're talking about for a well AP certification, yes, there's credential maintenance and continuing education. If you're talking about well certification for a building or obstruction, yes, there's renewal requirements of 3 or 5 years, and we'll discuss that in this section. So hopefully that's just a brief answer, and we can discuss it more at the end. All right, let's continue. So before I go into details, if you're new to well, which most of you may be, there are preconditions and optimizations. Preconditions are mandatory. You must remember that, and optimizations are optional pathways towards well certification. And let's discuss the preconditions and optimizations. There are 24 preconditions. That's across all 11 concepts. Okay, so you could probably look at this as an average of 2 or 3 preconditions that are required for each concept. Now, some concepts have more and others have less. There are 84 optimizations. These are optional pathways for projects to gain points to meet certification requirements in well, whether it's to become a well bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. So it's important to remember that the preconditions are requirements and the optimizations are optional. And there were a few more questions, I believe. Thank you for addressing those. Excellent. Okay. For example, let's take a look at one particular precondition, a smoke-free environment. All right, so this is a precondition, and this is a requirement and under well, and so there should be a in order to deter smoking from a building, or to deter building occupants from smoking, what the intention of this precondition is to minimize occupant exposure to secondhand smoke and reduce smoke pollution. So this well feature requires projects to ban indoor smoking and ban or restrict outdoor smoking within certain boundaries. And so this is a typical example, smoke-free environment. And if we dig into the well concept that includes this, then you'll see a little bit more about how this can be achieved and how points can be gained. Okay, so how do we get our projects, or your clients' projects, well certified? Well, you have to sign up, just like you did for this course. So just like anything we do in our lives, whether it's personal or professional, you take the first step, and usually the first step is a sign up, some sort of form, whether it's online or perhaps it's not online, and some method of payment or mode of payment. So the first step in well certification process is registration. And that well registration, certification registration, signifies your intent or your client's intent to pursue well certification. The Well digital platform is the official online registration application and project management system. So you see this website that's being identified in the slide, projects.wellcertified.com. That is the Well digital platform. We'll look into that and take a deeper dive in that in this session today, but this is the first step. And so this is the registration, application, and project management system for well. So one site. Once the registration invoice has been cleared, been paid for registration, projects are officially registered for well. So remember this website. This could be a possible question on the exam, projects.wellcertified.com. Okay, so let's take a high-level look at the well certification stages. The first one is pre-certification. And so pre-certification is an optional pathway that allows projects owners to demonstrate a commitment to wellness, a commitment to health and wellness in the built environment. And so pre-certification remains active until the project either achieves well certification or the registration expires. So let's see if I can, there it is. There's registration. So let's talk about these. We already discussed registering the project. First step, on the Well digital platform, projects.wellcertified.com, and then pre-certification, which is optional. And there is a fee associated with that, but then that gets rolled into the actual certification process if owners or occupants decide to pre-certify. And this remains active until well certification expires or the project actually becomes well certified and registered. And then we have performance verification. So performance verification is done by a third party. And we showed you GBCI in one of the prior slides, which is a third party that is not our organization. We are GBRI. And GBCI, or a third-party contractor that's approved by GBCI, can conduct the performance verification. And a project must pass performance verification metrics or benchmarks to confirm adherence to well requirements. And following that, the well, if a project has satisfied all of the requirements and the well report has been accepted by a third party, then there's a certification award. And that's the next stage. Okay, so registration requires basic information about the project and project scope, and that's different for each project depending upon the version or program under which the project registers. So there are possibilities to register for Well V1 or Well V1 Pilot or Well V2 and Well V2 Pilot, and Well V2 is the current version. And there could be a version 3 10 years from now. We don't know that yet, but for your exam, remember that a project can be registered under Well V1 and Pilot or Well V2 and Pilot. Okay, Pilot is nothing more than a program that's in development at this point. So from this point on, you're going to see some screenshots from the Well digital platform as we learn about the well certification through the eyes of an actual well project registration. So think of this as our project, and we are getting ready to register the project as a team. And you could see me or Jeslin as a project manager representing the client. And so to avoid any confusion, I'll differentiate excuse me, screenshot slides by including a note that says Well digital platform screenshot, like you see in the lower right of this slide. There's a number of questions in chat. Is everyone getting their answer? I think so. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Carolina, for handling those questions while I'm presenting. I appreciate that very much. Okay, so as you can see, getting ready for the project, we want to give a project a name. What is the name of your project? So it should be obviously a name of a building or a structure or some other project location and details. And so that's part one, is in project creation. This is on the Well digital platform that we talked about a few minutes ago. And projects need to be named. And then from there, we want to talk about project size. So project size is important. And so the boundaries of your project, the well boundary may not unreasonably exclude any portions of the space or the building to give the project an unfair advantage in complying with credit requirements. So it needs to include the boundary, all boundary may not exclude certain requirements, but the project has to accurately communicate the scope of the project and the footprint of the project. So let's talk about a single project may encompass multiple structures. So here you see 3 buildings, 1, 2, 3, and that could be a single project if certain conditions are met. And then there needs to be a project size, which is a calculation. And then documentation by performance verification can be done at the same time. So the point here is that a single project may encompass multiple distinct structures. Okay, and so we talked a little bit a few minutes ago about what well version do we register our project for. So the quarterly addenda version of well that was current upon enrollment is the answer. So for example, when I registered our example project, it's Well V2. So there you would see a quarterly addenda version of Well V2 that would be current. And a project can choose to update to a newer addenda as well. And so your client or you can pick, for example, Well V1 and Well V1 pilot, and that's for commercial institutional offices, and Well V1 pilot for multifamily, residential, educational, retail, restaurant, or Well V2 and Well V2 pilot for all Well core projects or other projects with no specific type. So this is a bit more broad, and so your client could pick either version. And from your exam perspective, you'll be testing under Well V2 with the Q3, Q4 addenda. Okay, so that's the addenda we discussed. And so we can note that that's the current addenda that you'll be tested under, which is Well V2. But projects can actually register under V1 or V2 with pilots. And it depends upon what's more advantageous to the particular project. Okay, so Well V2 works with all types of building projects, from commercial buildings, warehouses, stadiums, hospitals, schools, hotels. And with our experience from the pandemic, we know that no building was spared. So it makes the most sense to guard all buildings where we spend a good portion of our time with a well certification. And so when you register, we're talking now about Well V2. All parts of Well V2 are designated for specific types of spaces, and space types refer to spaces within a project and not the project as a whole. So there could be multiple space types within a single project. So for example, if the project is an office or a school might, let's use school for an example, it might be made up of space types like classrooms, offices, a kitchen, a commercial kitchen, and dining areas. And so you would check each of these boxes if it's a school. And these space types help clarify how the well features apply to that particular project. So we are selecting education, office, and library in our space type, and you can see those here. And then moving further down the path of certification and registration, what is the primary use? Well, the primary use was education. The sub-uses or the space types were offices, educational spaces, and library, but the primary use is actually education, because this one was a school that we selected. And so just for some clarity on this, spaces are designated as either primary or secondary. And primary spaces are those that apply to the entire project, for example, education, whereas secondary spaces were affiliated with the primary space. And the example with that is offices, library, classrooms. So a project could be comprised of one space, meaning that it applies one standard, or it could be comprised of multiple spaces and apply multiple standards. So here's an example. A school with a cafeteria would consist of a primary space that you would denote as education, and a secondary space, commercial kitchen. So every project is anchored by the primary space's standard. So the entirety of the project space falls under the purview of a single primary space's standard. Only that standard is required for well certification. If there are spaces within the project scope that meet the definition of another secondary spaces standard, then the project needs to adhere to the requirements of the secondary spaces standard as well. Okay, and then we get into occupancy. So who will be occupying the space? And so in addition to classifying the space types, we also distinguish spaces based on their level of occupancy. So let's talk about this for a minute. Regularly occupied space, what is that? That's areas inside the project where a particular individual normally spends at least one continuous hour, or cumulatively at least 2 hours per day, such as offices, conference rooms, bedrooms, classrooms, versus occupiable space, spaces that can be occupied for any task or activity, including transition areas or balconies, but excluding spaces that are rarely accessed, such as storage spaces or equipment rooms. So there's a lot to digest here. And one of the things that we provide for you is a PDF of highlighted, and I can show this after this slide presentation, highlighted sections in the Well Building Standard V2 that are important for you to remember. And in that PDF, we have highlighted in yellow all of the important concepts. So this is an advantage with GBRI's training program and course, is that you get a PDF that's highlighted for important points, and regularly occupied space versus occupiable space, and their definitions are highlighted for you. Let's talk about occupant types. So who is occupying the space? Once we've determined whether the space is occupiable or regularly occupied based on who occupies it and for how much time and frequency, what are the occupant types? Well, you can see here you have regular occupants, visitors, employees, and eligible employees. And so these are important to know. And I'll just briefly discuss these. So who is a regular occupant, for example? An individual who spends at least 30 hours a month across at least 5 days within the project. That could be an employee, a student, a resident, versus an occupant is any individual in the project boundary. So the regular occupant is at least 30 hours per month across at least 5 days. Who is a visitor? A visitor is any occupant who's not a regular occupant. So this could be a shopper in a store, a museum goer, for example, a hotel guest, an employee. An employee is defined under Well as an individual who works for the project owner within the project boundary. And then an eligible employee. So you might ask, what's the difference between an employee and an eligible employee? An eligible employee is an employee identified as qualifying for benefits. So that's a full-time employee at a minimum versus, for example, a consultant or someone working for the project owner. And so here's a hierarchy of eligible employees that you see here. Okay, calculations. We've talked a little bit about this. And what do you need to know for the exam in terms of calculations? Well, the most important thing to remember is, and this is an example here, is that we don't apply any kind of rounding. We use the most expansive interpretation of the Well Building Standard to come up with the result. So here's the example. So feature VO2 part 1 is requiring adjustable height workstations for at least 25% of all workstations. And so you may see on the exam, the last bullet, the third bullet, in a project with 21 workstations, the required number of workstations, what are they? You need to calculate that under feature VO2 part 1. So what you would do is apply the 25% requirement to the 21 workstation total, and you would see that you would get 23.8 if you had 5 desks. So 5 divided by 21 is not 25%, it's 23.8%. So in order to meet the standard of at least 25%, you would need 6 workstations. 6 divided by 21 is greater than 25%. So we apply the most broad interpretation or the most expansive interpretation of the standard, and that might be a typical calculation, how many workstations will be required. And again, this is multiple choice. So one of your choices would obviously be 5, another one would be 6, and there'd be 2 other choices. And so you'd have to do a brief calculation to determine that you would need, in this case, 6, because 5 would not meet 25%. Are there any questions about that? Yes, you're rounding up to 6.
Sorry, I'm going to speak up because it's too long to type. I know there are primary and secondary spaces type, but is there primary, like all of these different spaces type would have a different type of occupant? Is that the concept? Because if I take the example of a hotel room, a hotel complex, the hotel room, the primary occupant would be the hotel guests who sleep there overnight. The housekeeper is only there, I don't know, half an hour cleaning up. And whereas other places, back of house is primary employees there. So would all of these different space types have a different occupant?
That's a good question. Carolina, you've had some experience with hospitality and filing for WELL certification. Can you answer that question?
Yes, about the occupancy, it will depend if that cleaning lady is an employee and if it is a full-time employee or a part-time employee. Same with the visitors. It will, when you make the calculations, it will be the most amount of people that can use the hotel. Is that clear?
The most amount of people have to be the guest. It's not the employee, because there's more guests
Well,
than
the employee will also the employee will also occupy the building. So the project boundary will be considered the hotel itself. So the hotel will have all the staff, the full-time staff or the part-time staff, plus the visitors. And it depends on the visitors if they're full-time visitors, like the people that are actually sleeping on the hotel, or just people that are visiting the restaurants of the hotel. So everyone will be considered as visitors, as the people in the building.
Thank you.
All right, thank you,
You're
Carolina.
welcome.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about calculations. So I'm going to try to move a little more quickly without sacrificing too much here. Okay. One of the last steps of registering the project is providing an estimated documentation date. So as you can see here, this is an estimate you can see on the form. This is a screenshot from the WELL digital platform, and it can be updated at any point in time. And okay, could somebody mute their mic that just asked the question? That would be appreciated. Thank you. Okay, and once you enter the date, then the registration setup is almost complete. So here's a estimated date of document submission that we have. This is just an example. And we're going forward. And so what else do we have in the certification cycle? So I think there was a question about credential maintenance, but this is certification maintenance and renewals. And I think it was renewals was the question. So there are certification cycles dictate how often projects choose to get certified. So projects may register for single cycle certification under both WELL versions, and under version 2, projects may register and activate a 3-year or a 5-year certification cycle and subscription cycle. So here's a high look again at WELL certification, and let's take a look at performance verification. And this occurs when documentation review is complete and the project's ready for PV, performance verification review. And so here are the different versions that you see. Upon registration, WELL projects must undertake measurements for performance testing within a certain time frame. And so WELL V1 and V2 pilot is within 5 years of the date of registration, or while the subscription is active, whichever is longer. WELL V1 and V1 pilot, 5 years also. So we're getting close to completing the registration process, and we want to look at which program is best for your project. So WELL V2 projects fall into one of 2 main groups determined by ownership type. So owner occupied, the project is mainly occupied by the owner, which may be different than the building owner. And the first option is full scope or WELL certification across design, construction, and operations. And then WELL core certification is when the project owner occupies a small portion of the project area and rents or leases most of the space to 1 or more tenants. And that portion is 25% or less. So the second program is for projects seeking fundamental features in the base building called core and shell. So core and shell projects are treated differently than new and existing buildings and new and existing interiors. So let's look at core and shell compliance. So we said that core and shell compliance is when the owner occupies a small portion of the project area. So specifically, that's less than or equal to 25%, up to 25%. You will need to remember this, is fully controlled by the building owner. And that means that 75% or more of the project is occupied by tenants. So independent of the proportion or the portion of the building controlled by the owner, 100% of the core of the building, core and shell, and all portions of the interior build out are managed by the owner, are included in the scope. So it's a little bit to digest at this point, but some reading will help you in the WELL v2 standard. Okay, and so let's talk about building structure, windows, HVAC. And so core and shell typology addresses those as well. So that's window locations, glazing, building proportions, heating, cooling, ventilation, and water quality as well. So this encourages consideration of the site in relation to amenities and opportunities for wellness in core and shell compliance. Okay, back to the screen on the WELL digital platform. We selected for our program, our project, we selected full scope WELL certification. And now we need to select what type of ownership we have of the project. So we're just walking through like a mock process of registering the building on the WELL digital platform on the website, and whether or not we're planning to lease the space. And if we own and occupy the space, we select the second option, which you see here. And then now the project is registered. So we need to build a scorecard for our WellPoint scorecard and enroll the project and then make the payment. Okay, so now that we've done that, it's time to enroll the project and pay the fees. So the enrollment fees are $2,500 US for every project, but the program fees depend on square footage. So on our project, if you remember, it was 25,000 square feet. So we calculate a program fee, and it's based on the current rate of 26 cents US per square foot. So you would just multiply that by the 25,000 square footage to come up with a program fee of $6,500 US. All right. And then if you add to that the enrollment fee, the total fee is $9,000 for registering this project, right? And then we have on-site performance testing that you see at the bottom, and that is required for all projects. So the fees listed there are for GBCI to conduct the on-site performance testing. That's a third party. Alternatively, projects can elect and contract with local qualified performance testing agents that are approved by GBCI to perform that work. So this is an overview of the fees. There may be an exam question on what are the fees, and if they give you the fee per square footage, I don't think you need to remember or memorize the 26 cents per square foot. I think that will change with each different addenda of the V2 WELL certification guidebook. So in this case, you would just apply the program fee square footage to the amount of square footage in the projects and do the calculations. Okay, optional services. We have pre-certification, and that's an optional pathway. It's not required. And so pre-certification is really more about the intent to file, and that could be used in marketing, for example, for a building that is pursuing WELL certification. The owner or the agent may elect to pre-certify to use this as a selling feature or an attractive feature to attract tenants to the building and before it's occupied. So this is an optional pathway, and the fees for this is $2,500 for pre-certification. And it would be credited towards overall program fees at some point later in the process. And so you don't need to remember the pre-certification fee or the term, but to understand what pre-certification is and be familiar with the process. Okay, here's a WELL scorecard, and this is one of the privileges that registered projects enjoy. So you don't have to enroll or make payment to see the scorecard, but the scorecard allows you to make a checklist for each well feature, whether you plan to pursue it and mark it yes, or maybe not, or no. And you can see whether it's a mandatory feature, which is a precondition, or an optimization. And this is not a final document. This could be changed. And so obviously the preconditions have to be met. And so you would check yes, that you're pursuing them. And then optimizations could be maybe, or no, or yes. Those are not required. So this is a useful tool in the Well digital platform to begin creating a scorecard. All right, let's talk a little bit about roles. And roles, we're coming near the end of our discussion now. So who's who in the well registration process, the well building certification process? So the owner, the project owner, is the individual that holds all the legal rights to possess and control project relevant location and authorize decisions pertaining to that location. So I think you need to remember on the exam, the individual or entity that holds all legal rights for the project and its location. And then you have project administrators. These are project managers and oversee the well registration process. And that's the primary point of contact on the project, the administrator. And must be copied on all correspondence with IWBI and GBCI. And this individual is also the recipient of a comprehensive well report following documentation review and performance verification, as well as the award package. So the project administrator, who could this be? This could be a well AP, very much like you are pursuing accreditation for. It could also be the owner, which we discussed previously, or another designated representative of the project team. Then we have the well reviewer. So after documentation is submitted to GBCI, GBCI assigns a well reviewer, a third party who is responsible for reviewing your project for certification. And after submission for certification, the well reviewer is responsible for reviewing the documentation and the performance test results for compliance with all of the well requirements. And then we have on the right, the well performance testing agent. So again, that's a third party. It could be GBCI itself, or a third party or another agency or contractor that is approved by GBCI. And this might involve, as you see here, lab samples of water quality or air quality. And those would need to go out to a contractor for analysis, and then performance review by the well reviewer of the results. So there's quite a few questions. Should we take a brief pause and address some of these, or have you got this handled, Carolina?
Sure, it's really up to you, Doug.
Okay, well, for the sake of time, we're already in my section is about 45 minutes. So I wanted to keep it less than an hour. And I think we can do that if I just continue, if that's okay with everybody. All right, and who else needs to sign off? Well, additional signatories here are the well AP and coaches, owners, reps, rest of the project team. So let's talk a little bit about that. That could be MEP contractors, which mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. Those contractors are required to provide specific declarations or calculations pertaining to the project. So you may see on the exam in terms of documentation and performance verification that certain other additional signatories are required. And that could be architects, contractors, as I said before, MEP, and owners' representatives may also play a role in affirming that the design and operational requirements are met. And then the well AP themselves, the well AP credential recognizes building industry professionals who are knowledgeable of all of the concepts and applied frameworks of well and are experienced in its application. So well APs can be guides as well, a guide or a coach for the project team to gain points through certification awards. And project teams are not required to include a well AP, but having a well AP as part of the project team will help address all necessary aspects of well. and qualifies projects for achievement of pre-approved innovation features in well itself. And then there are coaching contacts. So without getting into too much detail, there are a number of roles on a project team, including the well AP itself. So this would be checked on the boxes in the well digital platform that you see here. And so the name of the owner, and are there any other certifications being pursued? There may be a few questions on the exam about other certifications, such as the BREEAM certification, LEED, or Green Star. So you should be familiar with those terms, what they are, and if there is any synergy between well itself and these certifications. That's something that you may see on the exam as well. And so here's Jeslin, our project administrator on the team. And then we can add different members to the team in the certification process on the website, which might be an MEP contractor or an engineer, for example, that we showed before, or an architect. And let's look at the roadmap once again. So well project registration, and then team formation, understand the requirements and documentation for submittal to the well digital platform, and then meeting a number of benchmarks along the way towards well certification. And you may see at times on the exam questions about documentation. And those documentations include annotated documents, letters of assurance, and general documents. And so the well process requires projects to provide documentation. And why is that? That's evidence that certain well features were met along the registration pathway. The well digital platform is the official online registration application and project management system. So that is the repository where these documents would be uploaded. And so that's a warehouse essentially for all of the documents related to a digital warehouse of the well project. And all of those documents need to go under review by the well document reviewer. And so once all of the documents are uploaded, the project administrator is expected to perform a quality check before submitting for review. The project will be notified when all documents have been received and reviewed and approved by GBCI or third-party contractors. And then documentation review begins once the payment has been cleared. So what are annotated documents? These are marked as you would expect. These are existing project documents that have been marked up to provide additional information to indicate how well features have been met. So that could include design documents, construction documents, as-built drawings, operations schedules, policy documents, signage, communication, narratives, and other materials. And then letters of assurance, LOAs. These must be submitted by the appropriate professional overseeing the implementation of a specific well feature. And letters of assurance could be from architects, contractors, MEP, engineers, or the owner. And general documents, the third one, are letters of assurance tied to specific feature requirements. So documents listed below are not linked to the feature, but these documents do not need to be annotated, but are used to inform IWBI and the well reviewer of project details. So then we have the intent stage and the implementation stage. And let's go into this matrix, which talks about document stages. And you can just see the three that I discussed in the documents: LOAs, annotated, and performance documentation. And so this is everything that you might need to submit. And then at the intent stage, is it a draft or is it a template? And then in the implementation stage, is it a final document or is it an as-built or some other type of documentation? So, okay. Thank you for answering those questions, Carolina. Okay, so now that we know the documentation requirements, let's look at some of the next steps in pre-certification. And pre-certification is achieved through different pathways for well V1 and well V2. So let's look at well V1. Pre-certification for well V1 and well V2 is optional. And the fee, which we saw previously, was $2,500 US. And pre-certification is focused on the intended design, construction, and operation. And it could include a short narrative for each feature and what level of well certification the project is going to target. For example, pre-certified gold. Again, this is useful in marketing and differentiating the project and making it more attractive to tenants, for example, that the project is seeking well certification. It might be seeking well gold or well silver. And then we have well 2 version, V2 pre-certification. So you can see the roadmap to that here. And forgive me for just skipping ahead here, but for the sake of time, we need to do that. So we have innovations and alternative adherence paths. And so this is something that you will see in the exam too, and you'll see in the well version 2 guidebook that there can be alternative adherence paths, AAPs, when projects wish to deploy alternative strategies to meet the intent of an existing well feature. So that could be something that's scientific based or regulatory based, and it can be proposed as an alternative to meeting a certain benchmark or guideline in a well feature, and that is something that's reviewed by GBCI and the well reviewer. And then there also are innovation features. So when projects wish to receive additional points towards the certification level, whether it be silver, bronze, gold, then innovation features can be pursued too. So this is optional, but if the projects want to receive additional credit for pursuing intents and strategies that do not have any precedent in an existing well feature, the project can apply for innovation feature points. And so well allows for innovative alternative solutions through their process. And as long as the feature intent is supported by scientific or medical or industry research. And so project teams can propose alternatives for any requirements of well by submitting an AAP through the dashboard on the Well Digital platform. Innovation features pave the way for projects to develop unique strategies for creating healthy environments. So a proposed innovation feature can relate to any of the well concepts. For a given project, innovation features must either address a novel concept or strategy not already included in well, or achieve results above and beyond the existing requirements in a well feature. So they need to be pre-approved, and the pre-approved innovations are published online. And again, these are supported by some scientific rationale or medical or industry research for innovative features. So let's talk about what can be submitted. For well V1 and V1 pilot, projects may submit for and achieve up to 5 innovations. And for well V2 and V2 pilot, projects may submit for and receive up to 10 innovations. So that may be an advantage for your client or a specific project for pursuing V2 and V2 pilot over V1. Let's go ahead and we'll talk about equivalencies. That's another important point on the exam. So depending upon the location of the project, different laws, regulations, or codes, these may be more relevant than the reference in the well feature. For example, IWBI accepts proposals for equivalencies, which may be used in place of the reference in well. And the proposals must cite the specific reference in well and evidence of equivalency. So equivalency is established on the basis of technical similarity or closeness in the level of leadership demonstrated by compliance with the proposed equivalency compared to the level of leadership demonstrated by compliance with the well documentation or the well standard. All right, moving ahead, documentation review. And well reviewers begin this once the project submits all design and protocol documentation attesting to conditions in place, implementation stage documents. Then performance verification. So we've talked quite a bit about this. Performance verification are tests, and tests span measurements across several parameters in accordance with well. It could be air quality testing for particulate matter or gases. It could be water quality testing. It might be a sample of the drinking water fountain or the kitchen water that's used in cooking. It could be from the light feature. It could be light intensity in lumens or lux. It could be spectral power distribution for intensity across the spectrum of light. It could be thermal comfort. Is it temperature within a certain range, or humidity within a certain range, or airflow in the building not to exceed a certain value, a threshold. And then there are others, acoustic elements for decibels, and testing and measurements for reverberation or echo to make sure they're suitable. And these are all typically done by consultants or contractors. And these need to be completed according to sampling protocols set by IWBI based on size and type of the project. And often it involves a laboratory. So you can see there's a matrix here of conditions necessary to conduct performance testing along the pathway of well certification and when that performance testing needs to occur. Those agents can be GBCI themselves or other agents that are approved by GBCI. And now we're pretty near the end of the well certification process. So we're already at the 1 hour mark. And so I wanted to stop there, but I think we can wrap this up in the next few minutes. And I'll have some time for questions. The well reviewer looks at the report and begins the review of a report once a project submits all design and protocol documentation, that everything is in place, implementation stage documentation is in place. And then if needed, if a project has failed performance criteria or other requirements, the well team has, or the project owner has 180 days to accept the report, initiate curative action or appeal. And so that's a period of 180 days in order to appeal or avail themselves of curative action where there was a failure in some of the performance testing parameters, for example. And assuming that that is met and the curative action is taken or their appeal is filed, then the process of well certification is concluded with the assignment of a certification level. And here you see bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, and the point levels that need to be amassed during the process through satisfying all of the required preconditions and then gaining additional points for optimizations or additional points for innovation features, for example. And the awards, you don't have to memorize the points. This appears in the embedded content. So you can open the PDF on the exam and see the point levels for bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And but you do need to understand that those are the different levels of certification. And so at least the number of points that you see there need to be scored or earned in order to achieve each of the certifications. And so the highest level is platinum. Okay, and then projects that have satisfied and accepted the report are certified and designated at a level of certification. And then ongoing monitoring is required. And then we have recertification. So we talked about 3 years, and certification is valid for 3 years. That's important to remember that. And projects must file an application for recertification on the Well digital platform no later than 3 years after the date on which the project was awarded the initial certification. And so here is the pilot for V2 roadmap that you see here. And you can see that we've included a task force on COVID-19 relevant to the times. And that was the pilot was contributed by thousands of stakeholders in over 60 countries and went through 6 rounds of review to come up with a single vote. So we're near the end of our discussion here about the well certification process. And it's just to wrap this up. Well is holistic. It's really, if you take a look at this diagram, it's sort of the intersection between policy, operations, and design for the holistic aspect of well. It's also flexible too for clients and clients' needs. And so we've talked about that a little bit by alternative adherence pathways and innovation features, for example. And so well is customizable too. And so there could be new adherence paths can enable novel or creative ways of achieving well features if they can't be achieved, meeting the normal or the typical well building standards due to some local or other conditions or guidelines. And well prioritizes accountability through data-driven performance review and on-site assessment. There's the performance verification and testing. So on-site testing combined with performance review is the formula for performance verification. And I think, for timelines, that depends on the project, of course, but maybe Carolina could talk a little bit about, because you've registered some projects directly, what's been your understanding of the timeline? Carolina.
I'm sorry, I was working on an answer.
That's all right.
What
What
is that?
is your typical understanding, if it's not different than what you see here, of a timeline from registration to certification?
Well, it's just as it says there. It usually takes about 6 months for the whole process to be done. It depends. Well, certification depends mostly on the owners or the company policy, because it has a lot to do with that. So if the owner of the company is fully involved, it may take less. If not, it may take a bit longer.
Okay.
Yeah, Derek, can I add one more thing?
Please.
Actually, this particular slide, when we were developing this, we didn't complete the slide, this particular one. So my intent was to utilize this for the Velo PDF, not for the exam prep. For the exam prep, we may not need the whole thing, but just to answer your question in general, I think it depends on the project itself. Like there are a minimum of 6 months for sure for the entire thing, but it may take sometimes, a year sometimes, depending on whether the project is already built, if it is existing building or new construction. Yeah, all that goes into question, right? Just like Carolina mentioned, if you have everyone on board, then it may not take a lot of time. Sometimes projects may pursue lead and well at the same time, which is the best case scenario. That way your designers are aware of the requirements, the synergies, and things like that.
Thanks, Jeslin. Okay, very good. All right, so I think we're going to be wrapping this up, and we showed this slide earlier, and here are the expectations for this particular section, and we'll talk about homework in a minute. Is that you should have knowledge of the registration process, the eligibility, the timeline, the roles and responsibilities of the team, the scoring levels, the point thresholds for the 4 categories, bronze, silver, gold, platinum. But again, that's on the embedded content, so you don't have to memorize that. The understanding of AAPs and equivalencies, and an understanding of what is pre-certification. Again, it's optional, and recertification, which is not. And then we won't be talking about synergies and trade-offs today or available pathways, but you should additionally have skills by the time you've done some of the homework and the reading in understanding how to manage the documentation process and coordinate the certification process, as well as the post-certification and curative actions, how they're recommended for non-passing results of performance testing, and project compliance with well features to meet the scoring thresholds. So that is the domain knowledge that you're expected to have. So I think we can, we're at the end of the session. So did we have a homework slide in here? I thought I did, and apparently I do not. Jeslin.
That's okay. I think so. Basically, I apologize for this again. This slide should not have been there. For the
Yeah.
homework slide, what
Want
we
to
would
share
recommend.
yours?
Yeah. So I can just also mention it here.
Okay.
For the homework slide, what I would mention is you can go through the on-demand portal and watch the well certification portion again. That's one thing. And then you can take the respective practice questions. That way you can make sure that you have a thorough understanding of the well certification process. As Doug mentioned, this has the most number of questions that you can expect on the exam. So that's number one on the homework. And after that, before next week's session, you can come prepared by reading through the air and water concepts. That way, you get a little bit of understanding before the session, and during the session, you can ask questions accordingly. Okay. So that would be the homework. And also for the WhatsApp, we can send you, if you have already paid for the exam prep, you will get a link, a WhatsApp link to join. It's a group link to join. Once you are in there, you will see us there. You will see other students. You'll also see Felicia and also our IT staff. If you have issues with your account, password reset and things like that. I also noticed that during the presentation, a couple of slides were blank, but on the on-demand portal, you will be able to watch them all, the recording and also the handout slides. You'll be able to get them. The questions, I think Carolina and I try to answer most of them. Lovely to see all the questions. Some of those questions are advanced because those questions are actually for, if you're working on a well project, they're all right on, spot on questions. From an exam perspective, you're not required to memorize the fees, the certification fees or any fees. You're not required to memorize them. But it's all good questions that you are asking. And if there are any questions that we didn't answer, we will go through them and we will answer them either on the WhatsApp group or directly with you. Perfect. All right, Doug, back to you.
I just want to mention one more benefit from the course that was very helpful to me. And if you can see, I'm sharing my screen here. This is the summary of the WELL V2 building standard highlighted. And so why highlighted? Well, highlighted is important because what GBRI has done is gone through the main concepts and all of the main points in a summary fashion that you see here with highlights. And so these highlights are what you need to remember for the exam. Now, how you remember them is a function of how well you study and prepare. But we do occasionally give you strategies and mnemonic devices on how to remember, or certain thresholds that you do need to remember that might not be on the embedded content. For example, in the sound concept, none of the thresholds are on the embedded content. So we content sheet. So we will give you some strategies as to how to effectively memorize those. But if you look at this in the air concept, you can see we've highlighted 90% of time spent indoors. You can see we've highlighted household air pollution is 10th most important cause of ill health. And you can see other highlights in here that are critical that you memorize and recall these on the test. And so as you can see, it's a small percentage of all of the paragraphs that are presented here, but these are the most important points to highlight. And this is an advantage of GBRI's course, is that you get access to this highlighted PDF of the WELL Building Standard V2.
Thanks for sharing that, Doug. That's very important.
It was very helpful to me in the exam too, to see that as a recap. And that's really, I think the use of the exam, somebody's asking how much is the exam. We said it was $299 US or 99 US for students. That's dollars.
Right. It's US dollars for $299 for professionals and 99 for students. Sometimes I think IWBI has offers and such like that. In the WhatsApp group, I believe a while ago, Felicia had shared something where they had some sort of offers. Perfect. So did we answer all the questions? I believe we did. Carolina, I thank you so much for answering them. I saw that you were also typing them.
Thank you, Carolina. Yeah,
There were a lot of questions, and some I had actually to go into the well certification page to look them up for it not to be
okay. Thank you.
incorrect. They were very specific.
Hey guys, this is Greg here. A question maybe for Doug. You mentioned stages and we started to go through a couple of them. Was there just like a one slide that had all the stages listed?
The stages of registration and certification.
Yeah, pre-certification, performance, registration. I thought there was something about stages, 6 or 7 of them.
One slide. I think we showed that several times, and we kept adding content to that one slide along the path. So the last one of the slides in the certification roadmap, it was a actual.
Oh, okay. That's exactly.
Shows all of the stages, and you know you'll have access to all these slides for the paid registration in the course.
Fantastic.
Hope that answered your question.
Yep.
I'll be presenting water and air next week, as Jeslin said, and it would be useful for you to do some pre-reading on those sections. There are quite a lot of thresholds. However, you don't need to memorize the thresholds, but you do need to understand, there's the stages. Thank you for sharing that. But you do need to understand what the different constituents are in terms of air pollutants and water pollutants and chemicals constituents. So in other words, which are organic, which are inorganic, which are particulate, which are gaseous. And so that would be very useful if you're joining us for the rest of the course and next week in my air and water presentation to pre-read the material on air and water, the air and water domains. Somebody's asking about France. I think there's a on the in the well site itself, well online, you can see how many APs there are in different parts of the world by country, if I'm not mistaken. You can also do this in the United States too. So I'm in Massachusetts. If I wanted to see how many other well APs were in Massachusetts, that's something I could easily look up, and you don't need to have an account to do that, from my knowledge. So I don't know about projects, Carolina, but I know about APs and qualified well AP professionals. That could be looked at.
Right. So on the, I can share the link. There's actually a projects link also, and also people like organizations and everything. So it is on the well website. I can share the link in the chat a second.
Yes, I was also going to add, sometimes when people register their projects, they do it privately, and they don't do it publicly until it's approved.
Right.
So there might be many in progress, but you won't be able to see them.
Exactly, exactly. And projects can also always opt in to keep it private, right? So on the roadmap, you know, this is the well certification roadmap, and somebody asked the question, all the stages. So Doug went through all of them. Like, as you can see from here, we start with project registration, and the end goal is certification. These are all the stages, right? And then we will go through some of this again during our other sessions, but bottom line is, like, you know, it's a integrated process where you start forming the team, then pre-design, pre-certification, all the way to documentation. And that's when you look at the innovations, alternate pathways, equivalencies, curative actions. So some of the slides, I believe it was not, I think it was some technical glitch, but I think I want to show them. Let me see. I think this was probably not shown, maybe, or let's see, this was, trying to remember. Yeah, this one I think was not, we didn't see this, right?
We did.
I think
we did.
Yeah, but I think on the our end, Doug, I think we couldn't see the contents.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's okay. That's okay. I think it could be some, you know, display issue. But I want to let you the students know that on the on-demand portal, you can watch them, you can download these slides. So anything that you might have missed, the recertification slide. Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right, let me also share. So did anyone, I think I see a question on number of APs in France. I don't know if we can see, maybe we can, let me see.
I did already, Jeslin send the link.
Okay,
Just
perfect,
did.
perfect, perfect. All right.
Yeah, that's very good. Thank you. The map is, I mean, the list of projects is very clear. The reason is that I was before in Hong Kong for 14 years, and in Hong Kong and in China, well it has a paramount importance. And I relocated recently, like 18 months ago, to France. I'm French native, and I was wondering if this was also a big, I mean, was considered as important or less in France. So I was just wondering to,
Right.
just looking at understanding.
Yeah, I think it's interesting is, you know, when we talked to IWBI directly a year ago, when we were introducing this course, we had an IWBI representative on this course. What we heard from them is they were themselves astounded by the popularity in China and Hong Kong. So sometimes it's, you know, just like the fear of missing out, you know, one developer does this and others follow, you know, it could be a, yeah, but just like lead, sometimes you will see it, you know, lead projects. In some countries, it would be a huge wave, like sometimes in the Middle East. So I think in Europe, some projects definitely are pursuing well, but I don't know from our perspective, we would be able to tell exactly whether it is popular in France or not. What I could do is, this is something that I'm equally interested in, the data. So we can definitely look into this. And if you are part of our example group, you know, next week I will make sure to share it. Sometimes, you know, LEAD provides these numbers. They call it LEAD in numbers. They give you exactly the top 10 geographical locations around the world in terms of popularity. So let me see if there is something similar for well. I'm assuming there should be, because it's in their own advantage. But let me see if I can find something and I can share them with you.
Great, thank you.
Of course. All right. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. As I mentioned previously, if you complete all our 6 sessions, you will also get our socially shareable badge, which is on a LinkedIn. You can share them on LinkedIn. It's a GBRI certified wellness ambassador badge. And we hope to see some of you for next session. If you haven't paid for session yet, Felicia may contact you all through an email with the link to sign up for that session. And if you have already signed up, we will see you next week, and we'll continue to stay in touch. If you have any feedback for us, me, Carolina, Doug, or GBRI in general, please feel free to share it with us. And if you have larger groups in your office where you would like us to come to you, we also offer that. We offer in-person exam prep. We are planning to host some exam preps in New York, live exam prep. If you have large groups, we would love to help you out with it. And we also have exam prep for lead Green Associate, lead AP, BDNC, and lead AP O&M. And that's something also which we help USGBC with. Thanks a lot, Doug and Carolina, for being here and helping the students. I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you.
I have one more question. Do you know the pass rate? Like, I know your course have a certain rate, but do you know if there's a pass fail rate that they shared from?
Oh, for our, yeah, right now it's 100%, Janice.
No, not your course, not people taking your course, but people actually writing the exam, as in.
Oh, right.
That rate.
I don't know if IWBI publishes that.
Okay, because in my profession they share that our title exam, they share the pass fail rate.
Yeah.
You do try to encourage
right.
people to study, I guess.
Exactly. So I have seen it for professional engineering exam, like you can see 50%, 60%, something like that, right? Because this is taken throughout the year. The other exams are like, once in 6 months or something like that. Let me see if you can find something which you can find, the pass rate. But from our experience, Janice, all our students have passed. In fact, we even offer a guarantee that if you don't pass the exam after taking our 6 weeks and passing our internal mock quiz, then we will refund the fees. So we have so confident. I mean, we are very confident about the exam prep. In fact, in our group, we recommend 6 weeks, but we do have, I think a few weeks ago, we had one student who just came in and he studied for 3 or 4 weeks. He took the exam, he passed the exam, but he was so nervous because he was like basically 3 weeks or something he studied. So we recommend 6 weeks, at least 6 weeks, so that you can become, confident with the content. That way, when you're taking the exam, you're answering them confidently. Yeah.
So that student was watching the pre-recorded videos because
Right. Yeah, he was watching the pre-recorded video, I think 3 weeks or something. He came in, I remember he came into the WhatsApp group, and in a couple of weeks he said, I passed the exam, but that's how he was. But we all have our own ways of studying for the exam. Some people like to, dedicate 2 weeks straight and study. Some people may be following a plan. So if with our exam prep, you get access to everything, on demand. So which means if you are set to take the exam in 2 weeks, you have access to all the content, all the pre-recorded meetings. You can ask questions directly to our WhatsApp group on that, everything. And even the mock exams or the practice questions, we have answer explanations. So even if you make the answers right, we recommend you to read through the explanations. That way you will get some possible questions, that way also you don't become overconfident, yeah.
Jeslin, I was going to add that one of the most useful tools on the GBRI platform for me in my study experience was the roadmap, the exam prep roadmap that you created for us. That was amazing. I followed that. It was so clear as a tool to study that it did help me a lot.
Perfect. Did we share that, Carolina, today or in the link? Or
we did at some point. I can share the link for sure. It's right here.
You can share this on the screen also, maybe, Carolina, then, that way you can see what you're referring to. Perfect.
I want to add that that was very useful for me too, the roadmap, as well as the concept quizzes and of course the 3 mock exams. And this is something that I was committed to passing all the concept quizzes with 100% and the mock exams with 90% or better. And you can see the breakdown of the answers, which is important as to understand why you may have scored something wrong on the concept quiz. And then when you go into the mock exams, attain a 90% or attempt to get 90% correct. If you've done all of that, then you're ready to sit for the exam. Of course, you need to sit through the 6 weeks of the course, or in the case of our friend who accelerated it, watch all the videos. But the concept quizzes are essential, and it's chunked down by concept. So you're just taking a 30-question quiz, for example, on one concept until you get 100% of it right. And then at the end, you're taking one of 3 or all 3 mock exams, which are very much like the actual exam, and striving for 90%. And if you can do all that, then you can be very successful on the AP exam, AP exam.
Perfect. Thank you, Carolina and Doug, for sharing that.
More than welcome. So there I'm leaving the link again for everyone to get there.
And we also have a video in our on-demand where it basically show. I think this was a video I recorded after I took the exam. So as a well faculty, I took an exam twice. I did my well AP exam years ago on the first version, and they gave me an option to take the new exam. If you take the new exam, I was able to skip the maintenance, the credential maintenance. And after taking the exam, I did make a video on what to expect on the exam, like in the screen resolution, where would you see the embedded content, PDF, document, button, things like that. So that's, at least you walk in with the familiarity of what to expect, where to see the calculator button, where to see the embedded PDF button, all that. So I highly recommend you to also watch that. It's probably like a 15-minute, 20-minute session. That's towards the end you can watch after you have done everything else. All right.
The link that has been shared, like I clicked on it, the latest link that Tina shared at 1:57. It's like a big page. Where is the roadmap? There's a lot of, I have to sign in to see the roadmap.
Oh, I think you may have to sign in, right, Carolina? It's a GBRI link, right?
Exactly. It's the March group, the March Well IP D2 exam.
Right. So if you already paid for the exam, and if you log in, then you'll be able to see the roadmap. But I think if you have not paid, then you may not be able to see the roadmap. Let me see. Yeah, I don't think we can. I don't think it is available for the
So you need to enroll. Exactly.
Yeah. But also I feel like the roadmap would make more sense if you're using our exam prep materials, because the roadmap follows our exam prep sessions. Yeah, but Janice, let us know if you need the roadmap. We can send you a PDF if it helps you. All right. So thank you.
No problem. I have to work out the conversion rate between Canadian and US dollar. Okay.
Oh, you mean for the GBRI course? Yes, of course. Yes. For the fees thing, I will ask Felicia, who usually is on these meetings. Today she couldn't join because of some personal reasons. So she may follow up with you all with an email link with the link to purchase the exam prep. There could be also a coupon code. There could be some discount coupon code. I don't know how much is it. That's why I'm not sharing it here. And that way you can work out how much that is. There could be a discount coupon code in the email. Okay. And please let us know if you have, because we also always do scholarships for students. We do scholarships for different purposes. So if you have anything, please email me or Felicia. We'll do our best to accommodate your request. Okay. And
sorry to interrupt, Jeslin. Okay, sorry, I joined late. I had work commitments. So can I get the pre-recorded version of this meeting so that I can, just go through what has been discussed?
Sure. Yes, Preeti. I think we recorded the session.
Yeah.
We will send you the link. Let me check with Felicia, because I think in the beginning when we joined, there are also some informal conversations. So we'll just cut them off, and then
No issue.
we can definitely share the link.
And of course, I would like to know what actually the offer is for, like other than student or something like that. See, I'll share what is my dilemma. In our corporate sector, there is a department called sustainability, and everything is there, but they're not very keen for this well AP. I mean, they want to know what well AP is going to add. So when I introduced this, they asked me, you just give us the write-up and everything. So, but their notion, like lead GA and everything is there. So their notion, it's all about building. It's not a, so
both the occupants, yeah.
Yeah. So in the in the website too, it's covering everything. Okay. So I had a hard time to make them understand. So it's all about, the well-being of that, which includes the building information also. So,
exactly.
So I definitely want to, if you have such anything, you have published regarding that, so that, sometimes it becomes difficult for us
I
to
agree.
make them understand why we are going
case.
to do it.
Exactly. So we did actually have a course called I Am Doing Well, Are You? So let me check if we still have it. The course itself was called I Am Doing Well, Are You? So let me see if we still have it. It was for the previous version, but let's see if we have a new version or not. In that course, we talk about what is well, why do you need well. During today's course, Doug did share 1 or 2 slides. I did share some slides on why buildings or why projects should consider well.
Okay.
But yeah, we also have a course coming up in Dubai, which I'm doing with Ala a few weeks from now. Same reason, with some building professionals. But if there is a huge demand, we'll definitely make a recording for to make a case for well or lead.
Okay.
As a sustainability advocate myself, I like to be introduced to these concepts to learn more. But sometimes, in the end, sometimes this all becomes a business. That could be a
Yes.
turn off. So that is what sometimes I'd like to keep it away from the business portion of it. Learn some things as a tool, apply it on your projects. But when money becomes the motive, then it could be a turn off. That's just our mantra. So we look at all these things from a distance. We would highlight the best things, how it is better for you. But sometimes we feel like, can we endorse it? That's a fine line between yeah. Thank you for joining, Preeti. Thank you for connecting with
Okay.
me on
Thank you,
LinkedIn.
Jeslin. Thank you.
I just wanted to add, I'm posting one of well-certified websites where it talks about how being well pays back.
Okay.
Got it.
So you can download it and use it as a marketing strategy if you want the company to be well.
All right. So our goal is to actually make these sessions into 90 minutes, but I see that some of you stayed with us for 2 hours. Very good, impressive, because we were originally our sessions were 5 weeks, and we made it to 6 weeks to make sure that we have 90 minutes. But of course, when we have a lot of Q&A, then it gets extended. We want to respect all your time, and we want to keep it under 90 minutes to 2 hours. But so I wanted to thank each of you for joining. I know some of you joined from different parts of the world. Thank you once again for joining us. I hope to see you all soon through other meetings, and I hope to stay connected with you. You can also connect with each of us on LinkedIn. You can, if you search our names on Google, hopefully LinkedIn, Google will show you our LinkedIn profiles, and let's stay connected and let's be part of this movement. To whatever be our cause, be it wellness of the occupants or sustainability or health and wellness of the planet, whatever it may be. I wish you all the best and see you soon.